science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
right.
But I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
It was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Story Collider, where we bring you true, personal stories about science. I am your host, Erin Barker, and this week we're presenting stories about cats. Scientifically speaking, cats are the worst. That's not my opinion, that's just science. And if you disagree, well, I have two stories for you right now that might change your mind. Our first story is from Tracy Rowland, one of the producers and hosts of Story Collider New York. It was recorded in September 2018 at Caveat in New York City. The theme that night was Game Changer.
It's late at night and I'm standing alone in my living room, and that's a strange situation for me to be in because my living room is a social place. People like to hang out there. It's 15 minutes from Midtown. My rent is cheap. I don't charge you a lot to stay. People come over. And also, it's located right by this kind of a row of bars and restaurants. 2 blocks away, and 2 blocks turns out is exactly as much space and time as a couple who's fighting and are leaving a bar. They need 2 blocks to figure out that, no, you're the asshole. And so they like to really work on that right underneath my window after closing time. And so the restaurant below me has helpfully provided a bench outside so they can really settle in and work on their differences underneath my bedroom window after closing time. And so, but this night there's nobody inside staying at my place, and there's nobody outside breaking up. It's a quiet night, but I'm not actually alone because I am fostering a litter of adorable kittens, and they are right upstairs. And I don't know if you know this about adorable kittens, but they are disgusting. This particular litter has brought with them a parasite, and they always have parasites. If somebody says, you want to foster a litter of kittens, just know that your life is going to be about poop forever. And it depends on the parasite. You might get off lucky. You might just get a little bit of coccidia. That's fine. Or you might be me, and this group of kittens has arrived on your doorstep in a basket, looking cute, loaded to the gills with Giardia. And here's what makes Giardia awesome. It's when you walk in your front door on the first floor, they're on the 3rd floor behind a closed door. Your eyelashes melt off of your face because the smell emanating from them is so inhospitable. It is an inhospitable smell, and that's why I'm alone in my house, because people have said, hey, I'd love to come visit. No, you're not allowed in my house. And, I'd love to come stay with you. Absolutely not. I'm just going to be here alone at my Superfund site with these adorable things. And what I've done in my house to try to mitigate this problem is on the living room floor, I've got all my windows open, and I've got box fans in the windows just sucking in fresh-ish air. I mean, it's Jersey City, so it's fresh air. But then on the 3rd floor, I've got the windows open and the box fans facing out. I've got this fetid chimney effect just going, and it's working. It's working. You can breathe in my apartment. You can't come over, but if you did sneak in, you could breathe. And so it's good, and I've got it under control, and I only have 5 more weeks of this, and then and life will get back to normal. But then suddenly my house fills with another smell that is the only other smell that could compete with kittens full of terrible poop. And it is a cigar outside my window that somebody is smoking, and it is getting sucked right in with these box fans. And this happens a lot because, thank you, bench. I'll get a smell, I'll get weed, which is actually welcome because you could probably tell that I need to chill out every once in a while. So that's cool. And if someone's just smoking a regular cigarette, fine, because they'll be done in 5 minutes. But cigar smokers, they're in it for the long haul. And that scent is just so cloying and awful. And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to walk downstairs, and it's going to be like some older white guy. And he's going to, have a little bit of an attitude. Because I always figure, like, the cigar is just it's the tobacco embodiment of, like, a MAGA hat, and a fuck your feelings t-shirt. And I'm going to go down and say, like, give the same spiel that I always give, which is, hey, you are welcome to stay here, but the cigar's got to go. And then they'll give me a little pushback. But not a lot, because they've heard this before, because the reason they're outside my window is because their wives have kicked them out of the house because they're not going to have that smell in their house. So here's like another old lady telling them absolutely not. So they'll push back a little, and then I always pull out the trump card, which is, hey, I got a baby sleeping upstairs, and it's going right into the nursery. And I glare at them, challenging them to argue about my advanced maternal age. And inevitably, they'll grumble, or they'll take their cigars and they'll leave. And so I head downstairs, and I'm prepared for this argument, but I'm not prepared for who I see sitting outside with a cigar the length of my femur. And it's this young kid, and he's very hip. He's very nattily dressed. He's got a slim suit, highly polished shoes. He's an African-American kid. He's got like an old school fade. He's got his laptop already and his phone. He's sitting down. He's got a night of business ahead of him. And he's gonna smoke a cigarette. And I was like, his cigar, and I thought, are you smoking this ironically? Like, who are you? And I give him the same spiel. I say, hey, you're welcome to stay here, but your cigar's gotta go. It's going right into my house. And he just takes a puff on it and he says, no. That's not part of the script at all. We have a social contract here. I don't really know what to do. And he says, this is a public space, and I can stay here and do what I want in it. It's not illegal to sit here with my cigar. And I was like, yes, it is a public space, but you're in my space, and your cigar is coming up, and it's going right into my baby's room. And he sees right through that. Takes another long drag, and he exhales, and it's just a big middle finger going right up into my fan. So I do what you always do in these situations, and I take a picture of him because I'm going to shame him somewhere. And he doesn't care. He's posing, for Anachronistic Cigar Lovers Monthly, and goes about his business. And I don't know what to do. So I do what everybody does. I turn to the internet, and I go upstairs, and I get on my little community bulletin board. And it's the little group where we just complain about, why doesn't anybody fill that pothole? Or it's so noisy here. And then you get the old school guys going, well, why did you move to a city? And then it becomes that argument. It's the most unhelpful group, on Facebook. But I get on, I'm just like, all right, they recommended a good plumber once. Maybe these guys can help me out. And also, I don't really know my neighbors. For as full as my house always is, this is like 10 years in, and it's, in order to actually meet my neighbors, I'd have to leave my comfortable house. And instead, I import old friends. And so I don't know these guys, but for this Facebook group and their dogs. I recognize their dogs on the street. But my neighbors and I have never really yet clicked. But I get on, I'm like, all right, you guys got to help me out with this. And I explain the situation. And then, of course, their first suggestion is, well, close your windows. And I'm like, I can't. Don't ask me to explain. But if I close my windows, I will die. So and they say, well, call the police. And I'm like, oh, no. I'm not going to be Barbecue Becky. I'm not calling the police on a black kid just living his life, even though the detritus from this life is coming up into my house and filling the lungs of my imaginary baby. I'm not going to call the police on him. And then somebody else helpfully points out that, well, if you call the non-emergency line, they're not going to show up because you've already stated that it's not an emergency, and they barely show up for the actual emergencies. I'm like, that is a good point. So the Jersey City non-emergency police line is basically a help desk, and I should call them. And so I call them, and the very first order of advice they give me, which is very useful, is close your windows. And I'm like, And then meanwhile, everybody's kind of having a little conversation online, and somebody's like, "Oh, hey, you should pour some water on him out your window." And I say to the cop, "Hey, somebody's suggesting I pour some water on him." And the woman on the other line is like, "Ma'am, that's assault. We don't actually recommend that you assault somebody in front of your house." And then she says, "Well, is this your property?" And I say, "Well, no, I rent." And she said, "Well, can your landlord, if your landlord contacts us, then it's different, because if somebody's put out a bench, it's kind of welcoming and you can't then unwelcome somebody. But have your landlord call us." And I was like, "Well, I know exactly where my landlord is. He's out in the garden smoking a cigar because his wife won't let him inside. And if I call him with this complaint, he's going to raise my rent to market rate. So he's not a resource at all." And so I thank the woman for her time, and I kind of log off, and then I think, oh wait, I might have a solution here. So I go up to the 3rd floor bedroom, and I walk into the fetid kitten room, and I pick up a bucket with a lid on it, and I'm so proud of myself that I thought of this. And I go down, and I go outside, and he's still sitting there, and he's getting a lot of work done. I'm actually really impressed because it's super late, and he's making phone calls. And so I go and I sit down next to him on the bench, and I put my little bucket next to me, and I just say, "Hey," and he looks up, and I take the lid off, and it's like the Pulp Fiction suitcase, but just glowing with kitten poop. And it takes him just a second for it to just melt his face off. And he leaps up off of the bench. He's like those little goats with those rocket feet. Like you've just never seen anybody just leap so high. And he's like, what is that? What are you doing? And I said, "Hey, listen, it's a public space. And so I'm going to sit here in this public space and enjoy it with my bucket full of poop." And he's beside himself, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's talking to his friend, "You're not going to believe this," and then he just hangs up, and then he's kind of having a little mini freak out. And I said, "Again, you're welcome to stay." And people are walking by as this is going down, and they're wondering, like, are they breaking up? And so then he gets out his camera and he takes a picture of me, and I put my arm around my bucket like I'm posing for the cover of Psychology Today. And I wish I knew his name, because I would totally make that my profile picture. And so he starts just packing up his stuff, and he's grumbling and packing up, and I'm like, I'm just, again, you can stay, but your cigar can leave. And he's, "Oh, you're crazy." And then so he storms off, and I cover my little bucket, and I go back inside, and I fill in my little neighborhood group on what has just gone down, and they're so impressed, very impressed. And so what has happened there is that I've cleared my air of one contaminant, and my neighbors now know who I am, so it's all good.
That was Tracy Rowland. Tracy is a 3-time Moth Story Slam champion who first appeared on the Story Collider stage in 2011. She's also part of the producing and hosting team behind The Liar Show, a long-running New York City institution. Tracy works days as a writer and video editor, where her promos and shorts have appeared on NBC, Cartoon Network, and Al Jazeera America. She won a local Emmy in 2010, but her mom still thinks it was the regular kind. It's okay, Tracy. We have our first show in Dallas this week, where my mom lives, and she asked me the other day if the show is for children. I said, "Ma, I've been doing this for 9 years. Have you been thinking I'm doing puppet shows in libraries this entire time?" But I digress. Our next story today is from Gianmarco Soresi. It was recorded in January 2019 at Caveat in New York City. The theme that night was rebirth.
I think I saw some of you recognize me from my college production of Cats. I was one of the cats. I was wearing makeup. Maybe that's it, but that's not important. What's important is that in the orchestra pit, which I like to call the litter box, there was there was this woman, and I don't know if it was in spite of her tuba or because of it, but I fell in love. And her name was Laura, and she's an Audrey Hepburn with the mind of an Annie Hall, like with these big, thick glasses that magnified her slight hazel eyes that nearly disappeared whenever she smiled. And she smiled every time I walked in her room. And then she would recreate an entire episode of This American Life or Let Me Be Little Spoon for 3 months in a row. And we dated, and our relationship lasted all 4 years of college up to graduation, and then we had that big decision to make. We had other couple friends, some breaking up, some getting married, and we weren't going to do that because one thing we had in common is both our parents were divorced. Her parents got divorced when she was 7. My parents got divorced when I was 7 days old. Yes. Yes, so like most kids, my first word was mama, but my next 5 were told me to tell you. So we kind of met in between. We moved in together in New York City to join an acting company just so I could waste a little more of my parents' money. And things were going well. It was the first girlfriend I ever lived with, but I had lived with plenty of my dad's girlfriends, so I had experience. And whenever we felt frustrated, we fortunately had a weekly pay what you can yoga class or I call it our weekly free yoga class to kind of get out all our tension. Until one day we were walking home from a very relaxing vinyasa when we passed this older man on the corner. Older guy, he had a big beard. He was in kind of a crumpled suit, the color of a tombstone. And he was holding in his outstretched arms a cardboard box. And in the box were 5 of the tiniest kittens I'd ever seen. And he launches into this story that he's actually a funeral director. And he was leaving a service that morning when he found the box with the kittens, no note. And he thought they were adorable, but his wife was deathly allergic, so he couldn't keep them. And as he's telling this story, I see Laura start to pet the kittens. And then I see her start to hold the kittens. And then I see her start to name the kittens. I'm like, we gotta go. Now! We gotta go! We gotta get out of here. So I give her a quick pat down to make sure that she didn't hide any in her pockets. And we turn to leave when this guy says to no one in particular, though very clearly for us, he says, well, if no one adopts him by the end of the day, I'm gonna have to drown him in my pool. Because, those are the only 2 options in that situation. And I try holding on to Laura, but it's like that thing I think when like a mom like lifts a car to save her child. She breaks from my grasp, she grabs the box, and she just gallops into the sunset like a lioness with her cubs. And when I found her somewhere in the heights, she swore to me. She swore she would have them in a shelter or adopted by the end of the week. And long story short, I had to drown them. That's a joke. That's a joke. Long story short, I was living in an Upper West Side litter box. And real quick, I think you maybe have gathered, I'm not a cat person. Because my earliest memory, like I've done a lot of therapy and hypnosis and sensory deprivation, and my earliest memory is my mom and I moving into her new boyfriend's house, and this boyfriend was actually my dad's former divorce lawyer. Yeah, it was very complicated. He went from representing my father to filling in for him, and yeah, I know it's the plot of Hamlet, and we're moving in, and he had this cat named Smokey, a black cat with like a little white at the end of his tail. And I went to pet Smokey, and as cats are apt to do when you show any kind of affection, Smokey scratched my face, and there was blood. And I asked if I could live with my dad forever. And I was doing okay though with this box of kittens because they were too small to get out of the box. But a week passes, and we still have 5 kittens. But they're a little bit bigger. Another week passes, still 5 kittens, a little bit bigger. Another week passes, we now have 3 kittens because 2 of them got out of the box with their claws, and now there's cats everywhere. There's stray tails. It's like a booby trap. And I step on one, a claw comes out of nowhere. I feel like Indiana Jones going to the bathroom every morning. And I tried so hard to get along with these cats because I loved Laura. I loved Laura more than I hated these kittens. And I even loved that that was her impulse to adopt them, because I think it's that same impulse that made her date me. Because in a lot of ways I think maybe I don't like cats because in a certain sense I'm a cat. In the sense that, I'm also an asshole. And I want you to know this is not just my opinion, okay? Story Collider, this is science. Because you see, here's the thing. The reason that dogs are so nice is because of unnatural selection. We domesticated dogs over 15,000 years ago, and we bred them to help us hunt and snuggle and make YouTube videos. And I know there's cat YouTube videos, but they're very different because I've tried to make cat YouTube videos. The dog is your scene partner. It's like wildlife. There's a lot of waiting and like baiting, and someone can get hurt, and that's because cats. That's why we have Toto and Beethoven and Air Bud and the dog from Frasier and Garfield. There's a reason, and it's because cats have only been domesticated for about 9,500 years, and unlike dogs, cats chose us. They came to us because we had food. The food attracted rats, and the rats attracted cats. And who did the cats attract? They attracted this parasite that lives in their poop. It's called Toxoplasma gondii. And this parasite causes a disease called toxoplasmosis. And this disease, if a mouse or a rat gets it, it changes their brain chemistry that makes these rats and mice attracted to the smell of cat urine. And humans can get toxoplasmosis. It's inconclusive if it changes our brain chemistry, but if it gets into a growing baby, it can be utterly lethal. And again, this isn't the cat's fault, I guess. And it's not like Laura and I were in a place that we were going to have a baby anytime soon. I'm just saying between the rats and the mice and the Toxoplasma gondii, you are the company that you keep. And cats are very arrogant. Like I used to try to talk to them and call their name, and Laura would defend them. She said it's maybe their feline brains can't understand our vocal patterns, but no. There was a study. I did a lot of research on this. There was a study called Vocal Recognition of Owners by Domestic Cats that showed cats do recognize their owner's voice. They can tell because their ears twitch and their heads move, but that's it. Other than that, they do nothing. They're just like, oh, it's you. And we get fooled. We get fooled because the cat, whenever we get home, the cats will rub against our legs. And we're like, oh, that's love. That's not love. They're just rubbing their endorphins and pheromones all over you because they're claiming you as property. It's like if I went up to you and rubbed my armpits on your face. That's not love. That's gross. And all this is real. When the show is done, just Google why cats are evil, and all of this will come up. The only thing that got me through this time was there was one cat of the 5 named Baby. And Laura named him Baby because Baby was the runt of the litter. Baby actually still had not left the box because he was so small. He was so small I could pick him up with like 2 fingers. And I would just lie down and I realized this is like the state I could enjoy cats in, is like when they're borderline comatose, really. Or catatonic, if you will. And I would lie down and I would put Baby on my chest, and I would just try to synchronize my breath with his, and for hours. But Baby, as babies do, got bigger and bigger. And one day I went to pick him up with 3 fingers this time. And I put him on my chest. And when I went to take him off, Baby scratched me on my face. And there was blood. And that's when I said to Laura, I said, look, this is not this was not the plan at all. I can barely take care of myself, let alone 5 cats. We don't have the money. We're both artists to the cat litter and the food and the veterinarian bills that are going to be coming up shortly. And like, this is not what we're doing. This is not the phase of life that we're in. And I love you, but baby, it's either me or the cats. And I really miss Laura. She ended up finding a home for 3 of those cats. She kept 2, Baby and another one named Posey. She moved to LA. She met a nurse, met a guy, and they got married, and they live together now. It's them, the 2 cats, and 2 beautiful children. Me, on the other hand, I'm single. I have no cats. I have no children. I have 2 roommates that no one will adopt. And yeah, I've been working on this story actually, and a good friend of mine named Alice, who I kind of run my stories by sometimes, she actually had a cat that somehow got pregnant and had 5 kittens. And she knows how much I miss Laura and how I can be lonely sometimes. And she came, she knocked on my door. She surprised me. She came to my door. And in her hand, she was holding the runt of the litter. And said, "Hey, how would you feel about adopting just 1 cat?" And I looked at that cat and I was like, "No, I hate cats. Have you been listening to anything I'm saying? What are you talking about? No way." But I do know now that I would live with 1 million cats if it meant Laura coming back. Thank you.
That was Gianmarco Soresi. Gianmarco is a New York-based stand-up comic, storyteller, and actor. He's headlined Caroline's on Broadway, Stand Up New York, and many more. And his work has been featured on Funny or Die, Fast Company, The Atlantic, and Netflix's upcoming global series, Bonding. He recently acted opposite Tracy Morgan on TBS's The Last OG and Tom Selleck on CBS's Blue Bloods. The Story Collider is grateful for the support of the Tiffany & Co. Foundation and of Science Sandbox, a Simons Foundation initiative dedicated to engaging everyone with the process of science. The Story Collider is led by me, Artistic Director Aaron Barker, as well as Executive Director Liz Neely, with help from Deputy Director Nissa Greenberg, Operations Support Manager Lindsay Cooper, and the rest of our amazing team. The stories featured in today's podcast were from shows produced by Paula Croxon and Tracy Rowland. The podcast is produced by Senior Podcast Editor Zoe Saunders with help from Gwen Hogan. The theme music is by Ghost. Special thanks to Caveat for hosting these shows and to Cats for nothing. I feel like they would thank us for the same. Thanks for listening.